Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-hosts, including Jeff Mack, Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Ethan Milrod, GoTo, David Jackowitz, Evolution Financial Group, Audrey Greenberg, the Discovery Labs, and Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank. Jeffrey, could you give us a rundown on who we have on the air today, please?
Happy to, Herb, and I'd like to thank Audrey Greenberg for hosting us today at the Discovery Lab. We have Lorna Weir, Managing Partner, Elevate Healthcare Marketing. Al Gianchetti is the CEO of XyloCor Therapeutics. Jeorg Ahlgrimm is the president of the Discovery Labs. And we have Azam, president and CEO of Tmunity.
Let's get to our first guest, Lorna Weir, Managing Partner of Elevate Healthcare Marketing. Lorna, what is Elevate Healthcare Marketing? What are you guys doing?
We do marketing and advertising in the pharmaceutical and life sciences space.
Mm-hmm. And where you're from originally? How many brothers and sisters? Where are you in the pecking order?
Was born in Waynesboro, Virginia. I am the third, the youngest of three siblings.
Mm-hmm. And what was going on with you 8 to 14 when you were a kid? Was it marching band? Was it Girl Scouts? What were you doing 8 to 14?
Actually, spending time studying and playing tennis.
Studying and playing tennis. Why was studying so important to you?
Well, my parents emigrated here from Scotland. Education was really important to us. I always took my school work, seriously, and loved playing tennis.
Ethan? Oh, you're muted, Ethan. There we go.
Yes, tell us a little bit more about why education was so important to you. Where did that focus come from?
Well, that was for my parents. That was the way to ensure that you could do all sorts of different things and be successful moving forward and satisfy an ongoing interest and curiosity.
Was there any specific subject that you really were fond of?
History.
Why history?
Just love learning about people, cultures, how humans have operated, what makes them tick.
What does that have to do with what you're doing today, Lorna?
Exactly. Everything we do is we help people make decisions. And in order for us to do that, we got to understand what's important to them, what makes them tick and how they make decisions.
Drew?
Yeah, Lorna, you mentioned that the family engaged in spirited debates. What was the takeaway from that? What's the lesson to be learned there?
Well, you had to think quickly. You had to have your argument, in order, and you had to be able to make sure that you were confident in what you were talking about, and you had to move quickly through the arguments.
Do you think any of those arguments back then had any impact on what you got going on today?
Absolutely. It's, why I went to law school. I think ultimately it's why I do what I do today, because it's all about love championing brands for our clients and, arguing why this is the right product for
Shannon?
Lorna, in the green room, you mentioned you went to 5 or 6 schools before graduating high school. That must have been hard. Tell us more about that.
Well, we moved around a lot for my dad's job, and it just, every time we had to go in confidently, meet new people, establish ourselves, and, make our way.
And how does that relate to the way you're building your team today?
We need to be really confident and fast on our feet in today's world. So, you gotta dig in, you gotta be strong, you gotta learn, and you gotta put yourself out there.
Mm-hmm. Audrey?
Lorna, talk to us about storytelling. How did that show up in your childhood, and how does that relate to what you're doing today?
My mother was an awesome storyteller. She really, actually, my love of history comes very much from my mother. And it just, she'd captivate. She had an incredible sense of humor. She could be serious. And so all those elements of storytelling and, sitting around listening to her, it's very much what we do today. We build brands, and in order to build a connection, with our clients and their stakeholders, it is about creating that connection and telling a story.
Mm-hmm. David?
Lorna, you mentioned your parents being first-generation Americans. How do you think that experience impacted you?
Well, my parents came over here with not much. So we had to it was very much a strong work ethic. My dad's 88, still working today. We had to be, self-sufficient. And we had to, family was incredibly important because they came over here and it was us. And so they always instilled in us a really strong sense of family, but our families were about friendships as well, the friendships that they had. So that, I think that very much stems from my parents emigrating to this country.
Jeffrey?
So, Lorna, when we were talking in the green room, your mom and dad taught you how to really dig in and get into the details. In the life sciences world, how does that apply to your clients? They're all in the life sciences industry. How does that philosophy and approach help them?
Well, we represent clients across a bunch of different therapeutic areas, and every single time we have to dig in. We have to understand the science. We have to understand, the marketplace. And so that's very much all those techniques and those characteristics we bring to bear every single day at work here.
If Herb was asking a really smart question about you in this interview, what would the question be, and how would you answer it?
A smart question.
Yeah, what am I missing?
What don't we know about you?
I'm actually, I think people know me to be very passionate and spirited, and some might say loud, and I'm actually quite quiet. I'm pretty introspective, and so I think people might be surprised by that.
Mm-hmm. Who's got the next question?
Lorna, I'm just curious what your friends would tell us about you when you were 12 or 14.
I think they would say that, I was pretty comfortable in walking into new situations because I came into a school at that time where it was a fairly small community and they're pretty tight-knit relationships. And, I came in and I had to be outgoing and I established myself and,
How did that serve you today?
You got to be comfortable with new, and you got to be comfortable, making sure that people appreciate, understand, and draw a connection pretty quickly with you. And that doesn't just matter personally, but in terms of our business, we need to make connections pretty quickly with our prospective clients.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned you played tennis when you were a kid.
I did.
Mm-hmm. Why tennis? What did you like about tennis?
Tennis is fast paced. I think it's a beautiful sport. And so a lot of skill involved. And so that's what I loved about it.
And what's that have to do with who you is nowadays? Those elements of why you love tennis?
Well, I played singles and, you have to cover a fair amount of court, if you will, and tennis. And that's what we do. And I love that excitement. I love that energy. I love that fast paced.
Did mom and dad show up at those games?
My mother did. My father was working. So my mom was there. My sister actually played tennis as well. We were first and second singles in our high school.
Was that meaningful to look over and see mom there watching?
Yeah. But, I also, if they weren't there, if somebody wasn't there rooting me on, I was okay with that.
Yeah, good.
Lorna, speaking of your siblings, didn't you tell us earlier that you're the youngest of three?
I am.
What can you tell us about being the youngest child? How'd that make you?
Well, I have a great relationship with both my siblings, but I was the loudest of the bunch. I definitely, wanted to make my presence felt. So I did. Is that where the storytelling comes in nowadays and the marketing? Yeah, I think so. A little bit of that and, and my mother, but you definitely, there was so much going on, in terms of conversations and discussions and debates. I had to learn pretty quickly that was, I could and should hold my own. And you mentioned there earlier that, you were the studious type, and I'm wondering if that studious type back then has anything to do with your helping really understand what your clients need and then translating that into a story. Am I picking up on that correctly? Yeah, I whether it was in college or in law school and what I do every day now, I really do like to dig in and understand and figure out what's at work there. Whether it's complex topics or it's human nature, I really do like to peel back and understand what's going on and what's ticking there. What's that have to do with Scotland, peeling back and digging in? People from Scotland are pretty tough and resilient, and they make their own way. And I think those are some of the qualities that have done me well. Mm-hmm. Is this job built for you? Are you really digging this? Yeah. Oh, I am. I did. First of all, it's my partner Frank Powers and I. It's ours. And, we built this company to do exactly what we're doing. And every single day I get to come in and I get to tackle new topics, new challenges, and I get to do it with a group of people with whom I have tremendous respect for and challenge me every day to be better as we do them. So you're really enjoying your job. You're challenged and you're studious and you're putting your energies into it. And it sounds like you're really digging. What's the website address for this organization known as Elevate Healthcare Marketing? ElevateHC.com.
Let me have that one more time.
ElevateHC.com.
ElevateHC.com. We've been speaking with Lorna Weir, who's the managing partner of an organization known as Elevate Healthcare Marketing. Website address one more time.
ElevateHC.com.
And don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. Stick around. We'll be back a moment right after this quick break.
You now can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your advisors. Yes, this radio and online social media exposure is free and quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors.
We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. I'd like to introduce Al Gianchetti, CEO of XyloCor Therapeutics. Al, what is XyloCor Therapeutics? What are you guys doing?
XyloCor Therapeutics is a biotech company developing gene therapy for people with cardiovascular disease.
And where you from originally? How many brothers and sisters? Where are you in the pecking order?
I was born in Philadelphia, raised in a suburb of Philadelphia. I have two brothers, and I'm right in the middle.
Righty. And 8 to 14, what was it? What kind of stuff were you doing 8 to 14 years old?
Well, 8 to 14, I was doing my schoolwork, of course, and also I had a passion for both baseball and music.
All righty. Drew, please give me a hand.
How did you get inspired into liking music?
It was really my cousin Ray, who I looked up to, my older cousin. He was a musician, and my dad took me to see him play one time, and that really inspired me.
And what was your role in the band?
In the band I played in, I was the bass player.
And what other bases did you cover? Didn't you say you kind of were running the show too?
Yeah. So, I was, I think people think there's a psychology about what instrument you take, and the bass player is kind of in the background in the rhythm section. But I really was the organizer of the band. I made sure people got to practice. I made sure we got gigs and was the leader of the band. But when we were on stage, I was happy to stay in the background and let the guitar player and singer take the spotlight.
What's all that have to do with who you are nowadays? The fact that you were the organizer, but you also stayed in the background. What's that have to do with the XyloCor Therapeutics?
Well, I think you can lead from behind. I think you always want to let your team shine. And I think that's very important. And I always make sure, whether we're in the board meetings or wherever we may be, that the people who've done the great work get a chance to shine.
Ethan?
Al, where does the humility come from?
I would say from my parents, both my mom and my dad.
Tell us more.
Well, I think, it was clear I got to observe my father at work and just my mother, just the way she raised us as children, that you really need to be humble and, and not necessarily be boastful.
Jeffrey?
Al, we were talking in the green room that you went to work with your dad sometimes at the Franklin Mint. Tell us about that experience and what did your dad teach you, or what did that experience teach you?
Right.
Well, it was amazing to me as a child because I had no idea what my dad did. I knew what he did at home, but when I went to work, I was very impressed because he ran a department there and he was in charge and people came to him and he worked with people to get things done. And I really was inspired by that.
What do you take to work every day from your dad?
Just hard work, dedication, and collaboration with people. Just having those relationships with the people you work with.
Perfect. David?
Al, how do you see seeing your dad at work and the experience there? How did that draw you to a leadership position today?
Good.
Well, there's no question that it was an inspiring event for me just to see his command and being in charge and working with people and not just doing it yourself, but leading others to bring out the best in them.
Mm-hmm. Audrey.
Al, you mentioned XyloCor Therapeutics is gene therapy for cardiovascular disease. What motivates you every day to attack that indication?
It's really about the patients. These patients suffer from their cardiovascular disease, and in particular, we're trying to address patient needs in patients who have no treatment options.
And is there anything from your personal life that motivated you to go after this?
Yes, indeed. My father died from cardiovascular disease, and in his last months, he was really struggling. He had no treatment options, and I saw how it affected his life. So that's definitely inspired me personally.
Tell us more about that. You saw how he had no treatment options, but tell us more about that stuff.
Well, he was very sick with cardiovascular disease, having survived cancer due to the remarkable treatments that are out there today. And it was a really difficult discussion when we went to the cardiologist after a battery of tests, and they said, there's nothing we can do for you. And he was resigned to not being able to walk up a flight of steps just to go to the bathroom. So
how'd that all make you feel?
Well, it was difficult to see him, a man who was so capable and able in his younger days. And when I remember when he lost his driver's license because he was no longer able to drive, that was, I lived the impact that these patients that we're trying to help have seen.
What do you mean you lived the impact that your father felt? What are you talking about? You're supposed to be CEO of a company or something.
Yeah, it's just observing my own father and how he suffered through his cardiovascular disease gives me the understanding of what we're trying to do for the patients. And, that's at the center of what we do. All of the team at XyloCor, we keep the patient's needs in mind. And it's inspiring to know that we might be able to provide a treatment that can help them and affect their life in a positive way.
Shannon?
Oh, you mentioned your mom earlier. Can you tell us a little bit more about her and what she was like when you were growing up?
My mom is 83 years old. She still is a finance director for a charity, and she's very active, and she's a very giving person. She's cares about people, and she has a very high emotional intelligence, and I think I've learned a lot from her about how to interact and get along well with people.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey, what else are you thinking there?
We were talking about your mom and how she sort of organized your life, and it was very organized, staying up on things. What do you take to work every day in your management style with your executive team that you learned from your mom, Al?
Well, it's really about, inspiring people and, keeping those open relationships, building trust, communicating openly. And that is a channel for success.
Mm-hmm. Audrey, what else are you picking up?
Yeah, baseball, bass player, the heartbeats. There's some underlying theme here. What is it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's just a matter of things that, inspired me in life. And baseball is a great example. My grandfather inspired me, and I have a lot of fond memories playing baseball. One of which was a game I played against my younger brother, and he was the pitcher, and he struck me out in the game. There was nothing more humiliating than being struck out.
On the baseball team, what was your role on your childhood baseball team?
I was going to say the next at bat I hit a home run, so I felt vindicated after that.
What was your role on the baseball team?
My role on the baseball team was I played center field and first base.
What was the personality trait that you brought to center field and first base?
Well, I don't think it was a personality trait for center field. I was fast, so I could cover a lot of territory. I think that was the main thing.
Mm-hmm. And what does that have to do with who you are nowadays?
I'm willing to, apply myself where the team needs. And I think baseball is a great example of a team sport, but everybody has their chance at bat. And when you get your chance at bat, you have an individual opportunity within a group to shine. And that's sort of like being in a biotech company.
Ethan, Drew, what are you guys thinking?
I was just going to ask what your bandmates would tell us about you.
They would say I'm a dedicated bass player and help keep the rhythm section together and keep the foundation. And again, it's one of those situations where I may not shine when we're out there playing, but if I'm missing, they're going to notice.
What about being sandwiched between two brothers? How did that impact you in your life?
People say being the middle child has its own challenges. I saw it as an opportunity. My older brother blazed the path, and my younger brother was always kind of the baby of the family, and I just learned to find my own way.
Jeffrey?
Al, what's your biggest challenge that you're facing these days?
I think, life has a lot of challenges in terms of the volume of information that we have access to. Emails, phone, text messages. We're overwhelmed with stimulus. And I think just remaining focused, is really, really critical.
Mm-hmm. Ethan, last question. What is it?
What's your hope for XyloCor in the future, Al?
My hope is singular. I hope that we can improve patients' lives who are suffering with cardiovascular disease.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is the website address for XyloCor Therapeutics, and how do you spell it?
XyloCor is the website is XyloCor.com. It's XyloCor.com. So with an X, not a Z.
Give me that one more time.
XyloCor.com.
How to spell it?
XyloCor.com.
We've been speaking with Al Gianchetti, CEO of XyloCor Therapeutics, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment, right after this quick break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Jeorg Ahlgrimm, president of the Discovery Labs. Jeorg, what is the Discovery Labs? What are you guys doing?
We are providing development and manufacturing services for cell and gene therapy clients, as well as real estate service for the life science industry.
And where you're from originally, and how many brothers and sisters, and where are you in the pecking order?
So I'm born in Weimar in East Germany, which at that time when I grew up was part of the communistic part of Germany. And I'm the older brother of two.
So tell us a little bit about what was the effect of you growing up in East Germany back then.
So we grew up behind the wall. We were not able to travel. And of course, from a personal life, you had, not the freedom which everybody is used to today. But it taught me a lot of things for my personality. For example, that I'm, humility, being modest, and caring for each other and building a sense of community.
What's that stuff have to do with your role it says here, you're the president of the Discovery Labs?
I think as a leader, the basic, task you have is to make sure you create for your team an environment where they all feel part of the team, number one, and number two, they feel like they can bring their best and that we are standing up for each other.
Audrey?
Yeah, in addition to humility, you have an incredible work ethic. How did that show up and where did that come from?
It showed up, I would say, in almost every aspect of my life. I learned very early on, also with the experience in East Germany, that you have to work hard in order to develop yourself and basically unleash your capabilities. So it started very early on and went throughout my career.
Shannon?
Jeorg, in the green room, you mentioned that soccer was a big part of your childhood. What was your role on the team?
Yeah, I was in pre-defense. So my role was to basically stop the attack from the other team and make sure that my team gets back into offense. And I was also the captain of the team.
And how does being in that defensive role relate to the way you're leading at the Discovery Labs today?
Yeah, so clearly one of the roles I have is to make sure that my team feels safe. So I am the first, if you will, defense to help my team to tackle issues. And issues are happening on a day-to-day basis, but my role is to make sure that we are solving the issues, bring the positive attitude back into the team, and then march towards a brighter future.
Ethan?
Jeorg, if we asked your teammates back then what they would say about you, what would they say about you, and why do they pick you as the captain?
They would say that I'm a very calm person, that I can, relate to hectic in a way that I bring order back into the chaos, and that I'm very clear in giving direction and hope.
How does that relate to what you're doing today, Jeorg?
I think it relates one-to-one. So that is what the team is looking to me to be able to help them with. Make sure that I'm there for them. I provide a safe environment where also mistakes can happen, but together as a team, we do everything we can in order to win the game.
True. You're a captain today. You're born to be one.
Yeah, I was just actually going to say that. You're like a born leader, and I'm just curious, where did that confidence come from?
In part from the soccer, but also, I guess from a genes point of view through my parents. So that this is where I basically learned some of the traits which I have today and where I got the blend of experience.
How did your dad teach you that?
So my dad was a very direct person. And I would say, from my point of view, leadership consists out of hope and clarity. So that's what a leader has to do. My dad was the clarity guy, thinking back. He was very direct. And he always told me exactly what to do, while my mom was more on the hope side. So she has had empathy. She knew everybody. She, calmed down my dad when it had to be. And she made sure that the family, stays together and moves through life, so to speak.
David?
You mentioned in the green room about being a defenseman in soccer, which is obviously a very important role, but you don't get all the glory. How does that impact you today, or how does that affect you today?
So you may not get all the glory, but you are the one who makes sure that no issue happens, no counter goal, number one. But more importantly, in that role, you also set up your team for the next attack. And I think that's where, the glory comes from. And the glory itself is when your teammate scores the next goal, and you were actually the one who actually provided the basement for that success.
Jeff?
So, Jeorg, earlier you were telling us about your mom and dad, firmness and hope and clarity. Are you more like your mom, or are you more like your dad?
I think I'm a good blend between the two. And I'm very happy about this, because I don't think that one or the other would be as effective as the blend between of the two.
And when you walk into the office or a board meeting, what do you take to work every day from mom? What do you take to work every day from dad?
So from my dad, I think I have the absolute clarity and the precision, numbers, plan, strategy, move. I think from my mom, I have the ability to sense the mood of the counterpart, be able to message myself towards the audience, and the empathy to bring the whole team with me and for success.
And if you were mentoring a young person coming into the organization, what would be the first piece of advice to somebody who's in their 20s to become successful?
Errors are allowed. Make sure you only make them once.
Mm-hmm. Audrey?
Yeah, Jeorg, earlier in the green room, you mentioned that even though you were raised in East Germany, your family went on vacation, and this experience opened your eyes to the world. What was that? Tell us about it.
Yeah, clearly at that time, traveling the world was a no-go. So we traveled the world we could travel to. So we went to Hungary, Czechoslovakia, those countries. And we were also taught in school that, people from the Western world are not our friends necessarily. So one vacation, we met actually a couple from Belgium, and my parents and them became very close up to today's time. But at that time, for my brother and I, it was a bit eye-opening that whatever we were taught in school, actually in reality, we're all humans.
So you were hanging out on a vacation with your brother and your parents. They were talking to other adults, and they had kids, and you must have been hanging out with these kids, and you got an impression that maybe the way you saw things wasn't necessarily the right way, and you were open to that?
Absolutely. So we were playing together. We realized that, it's the same. They have the same problems than we are, the same hopes than we are, same dreams than we have. And it felt very normal, which at that time was very refreshing.
So you don't necessarily think you're right. And I'm wondering if that has helped you build this business and is helping you build this business. The fact that you have hope and clarity in you, but yet you don't need to be right.
I mean, you still have to be right, but you have to make sure that you create a platform where all diverse type of folks can come together in order to create success for the company.
So you're not judging people black, white, green, purple, male, female. You're judging them on who they are in terms of where they fit into your team?
Absolutely. Who they are, what they bring to the table, and how they contribute to the team.
How young were you when that showed up when you were playing sports? Your ability to pick and choose people, where they fit on the team. How'd that show up?
I think this was when I was 12 and basically had to work with the trainer, the coach at the time, in order to make sure that we set up the team in a correct way. Take the learnings from the last match, change the team for the next match in order to increase success over time.
So your implicit nature is figuring out where everybody fits all the time?
And develop them. Even if they may not fit today, what are the steps to take in order to fit there tomorrow?
Where'd you get that from?
I mean, it started through the time of soccer, but I think it got refined over time with every job experience I had.
Mm-hmm. And tell me, what's Audrey bring to the party for you? Why is she such a good compliment to you?
I think Audrey is also a very calm person. We are working in a high-intensity environment. And between Audrey and I think we are, a very complementary team to, on one side, make sure that we are adhering to the needs of our owner, but on the other side, making sure that our team, is marching in the right direction.
What's the website address for the Discovery Labs?
DiscoveryLabs.com.
We've been speaking with Jeorg Ahlgrimm, president of the Discovery Labs here on Executive Leaders Radio. Let me have the website address one more time, please.
DiscoveryLabs.com.
DiscoveryLabs.com. Don't forget to visit our website, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. That's ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, stick around. We'll be back in a moment right after this quick break.
Recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, Executive Leaders Radio. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Simply visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable. Yes, this radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors for free exposure.
Back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. I'd like to introduce Azam, President and CEO of Tmunity. Oz, what is Tmunity? What are you guys doing?
Tmunity is a cell engineering therapeutics company, biotech company that is transforming the world of cancer. We re-engineer patient cells to cure cancer.
And where you're from originally? How many brothers and sisters? Where are you in the pecking order?
So I'm originally from the UK. Born and raised in a suburb of Manchester in the north of England. I'm one of two, me being the eldest and a younger sister.
And 8 to 14, when you were a kid, what were you up to? What were you doing?
Sports-wise, I was passionate about soccer. I'm a Manchester United fan. Always have been, always will be till the day I die. And other sport was karate.
Mm-hmm. All righty, Jeffrey.
So, Oz, we were talking in the green room that your mom and dad came from Pakistan to where you grew up. What was the effect of being a kid of the first generation?
It was a hectic life and a great life and lots of happy, fun memories. You learn a lot as a kid of first-generation immigrants to basically hustle and be resilient and tenacious.
And what was your dad doing there, and what did he have to do here to move forward in life?
Yeah, so my dad was actually originally a civil servant in Pakistan. And then when he moved in the early 60s to Britain, he did a big pivot in his life. He became a factory worker because that was the only kind of employment that was available in those days to someone of his background.
You mentioned he was highly educated. How did that happen, and how did that rub off on you?
So he's a very curious man. I mean, he was educated at the time when the British actually were in what was then India, before Pakistan and India were one nation, right, before they were separated. And, he grew up in a classic sort of highly educated environment. His dad, my granddad, was a teacher. So he had all the curiosity genes there, and that rubbed off on me, I think.
Mm-hmm. Ethan?
Oz, earlier in the green room, you were sharing with us the dynamics and the hustle and bustle of the neighborhood that you lived in. Can you share with us more about that? And specifically, didn't you tell us there was a one person that really rubbed off on you?
Yeah, so we were talking about, the entrepreneurial environment of immigrants, because by nature, you have to be very, very entrepreneurial as immigrants, right? A lot of people want to hustle and progress their careers in different ways. Business is a big part of the psyche of immigrants. You see that across the world. And that rubbed off on me. Even though my father wasn't a businessman, I was surrounded by tons of them. And
there was one person in particular that really mentored you?
Yeah, there was a guy, Abid, who was very prominent in my life. And, mentors, you learn great things from them. You also learn things that you shouldn't do. Abid was very, very entrepreneurial. And, that was a guy who just put his irons in many different fires, but he couldn't get focused. And so I learned that the price you pay, he'd just about get successful, and then he'd lose concentration and go into something else, and it would be a complete disaster. True. So I learned about that from him.
You're the type of guy that can talk with anybody about anything and have a great conversation. Where'd that come from?
I think a big part of that comes from my dad, who was a great conversationalist. He was very comfortable in his skin, and he was curious. So he I think that kind of rubbed off on me. I love to hear stories. I love to hear people's stories and their life journeys. I mean, it's the best, and we don't do enough of it, right? We just stopped doing that with social media and the technological age.
Shannon?
In the green room, we talked about how at 10 years old, you turned to karate. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I turned to that sport at that time because I was bullied, quite badly, actually. And that sort of took me to self-defense.
And at 10 years old, being bullied, what did that do to you?
I mean, looking back now, you connect the dots. It had a huge psychological implication on me, right? In terms of, overcoming fear. You learn that, at a very young age, then you reinvent yourself and you get used to hard knocks and getting back up again, right? And it also gave me a very, I think, strong centering in justice and what is right. And I think that's played on in my life now about the things that I'm passionate about, outside of my daily work.
And where do you see that show up at work nowadays?
I think it shows up a lot in the way I think about how I build my company. I mean, diversity is very, very important to me. The makeup of organizations is very important to me. And, actually seeing through, the initial impressions we all form about people very quickly because of unconscious biases or conscious biases, right? That's something that I've, really, really tried to work hard in my life at, because we all have them, right? But I try and instill that into the thinking of my leaders and my teams in terms of really digging and decoding the layers before you make
Audrey?
Yeah, as you mentioned that Tmunity is re-engineering cells to attack cancer. You must be surrounded by geniuses. How do you deal with that? Where does humility come in for you?
Wow. Yeah, I'm very, very blessed. I am surrounded by some of the, the godfathers in the field of T-cell engineering. And what teaches you humility is failure. So in the world of cancer, there are lots of failures. Now, you take 3 steps forward, and honestly, you take 5 steps back. And that happens to me on a constant basis in a company like Tmunity. And you have to become tenacious and resilient. And by default, you become humble if you're not already, because cancer is a very, very fickle and dangerous foe. And that's how we're going to win it, by humility and being focused.
David?
As you mentioned about your passion for curing cancer, what drove you to that? What got you, really passionate about it?
So, I mean, I was passionate being a physician by training. That was my first proper job, as my mum says. But, seeing life up close in my own family, seeing devastation in the terms of diseases that couldn't be cured. So I'm very heavily shaped by my niece, for example, who has a very rare form of muscular dystrophy, and seeing how that completely transformed my sister's life in becoming a full-time carer. That's shaped me and thinking about disease in general. And then, having worked in this space for the past decade and actually seeing how cancer destroys lives of families. It's not just the individual. It's the whole screwed up system around cancer, right? The cost of it, the long-term outcomes for patients living in the US, that's all sort of driven me to where I am now.
Al, I understand that you worked with Oz in a previous life, and we're hearing Oz describe himself. How would you describe what you remember about Oz? Who is he?
I just remember I have great memories of the times we worked together in partnership, and he's a very smart guy, got a lot of great drug development experience. But what really impressed me was his ability to work with other people in challenging situations. And we were in some really tough circumstances. I was always very impressed with his ability to work collaboratively, even when people were in opposing views.
Mm-hmm. Audrey?
You mentioned that your mentor, when you were young, gave you the direction to stay focused. How do you do that now? What lessons from him allowed you to stay focused today, and how do you do that?
So focus is really important in terms of delivering what we need to for patients, right? So center of it all is you got to keep your eye on the prize on one really major goal. That doesn't mean to say you don't incubate different ideas. And you need to have that yin and yang as a CEO, where you have a set of priorities, and usually to make it work, you need to have one or two really clear focused areas, because then the rest of it just can't come through. You can't pull through. And I think that's something that, I've had to master over time, because I'm the kind of guy who loves to think about many different things. But I've also learned to my cost, right, that if you don't really focus and energize an organization behind a clear vision and a clear purpose and with really clear goals, you're not going to get very far.
Jeffrey?
You also mentioned failure. How do you get over failure and bring that humility to the table now?
I mean, I've had professional failure. I mean, 10 years ago, I started my own company in 2008. You recall that was the year the first big financial crisis happened, right? And, could not raise a single cent in that environment. Yet 10 years later, I was able to raise substantial capital. And so, those lessons previously really shaped my thinking in terms of how to get back on the saddle and have the courage and tenacity to keep carrying on. And the purpose is the main thing, right? I mean, to solve a major problem like, cancer is a really big way to get yourself out of bed and jazzed every morning, let me tell you.
Jeff, last part of the question.
Part of your brand are the words "Uncancer the World." Tell us about Uncancer the World and where's that going?
We've got to do it quickly.
So yeah, this is the vision for the company, and it's a bold ambition goal. You're going to have big, hairy goals, and that's our hairy goal. And we believe we've got a great platform to be able to deliver it, and watch this space.
What is the website address for Tmunity, Oz?
Tmunity.com, TMUNITY.com.
We've been speaking with Oz Azam, President and CEO of Tmunity, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Jeffrey, can you give us a rundown on who we've had on the air today, please?
A great show, and thanks again, Audrey, for hosting us at the Discovery Labs. We had Lorna Weir, Managing Partner, Elevate Healthcare Marketing, Gianchetti, CEO, XyloCor Therapeutics, Jeorg Ahlgrimm, President of the Discovery Labs, and Oz Azam, President and CEO of Tmunity.
Excellent. I'd like to thank my co-hosts, Jeff Mack, Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Ethan Milrod, Go2, David Jackowitz, Evolution Financial Group, Audrey Greenberg, Discovery Labs, and Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, for giving me a hand structuring the questions, hopefully providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.